Hello, good evening. Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Yes, so we are moving into our final session. We'll be covering a few things today, and mostly we'll be able to all the topics, go into the discussions of every topics, and meaningfully wind up the geography session. So it's been a long process. It's been a great journey to to share some of the information that I have with you. It's been nice. So anyhow, we'll we'll wind up the things in a beautiful manner, right? So when you look at that, we were mostly dealing with the environmental impacts, with condition of environment in relation with man. Till in the last couple of days, we looked at how man's different action cause different kind of changes in environment, and how environment is causing different influence on is having different influence on man. ഈ രണ്ട് കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇത്രയും ദിവസം പഠിച്ചത്. And നമ്മൾ എന്താണ്, especially we looked at environment from forest perspective. Forestനെ എങ്ങനെയാണ് ബാധിക്കുന്നത്? We took the example of tropical rainforest. That's the one we've done till now. Now, besides that, we had also identified what are the different impacts that will be happening into different spheres. Now, if you look at the man's environment, man's impact on environment in general, not in a biome wise, but in a generalistic manner or issue based manner, we can see several such impacts, which we see in GS also. For example, decline in biodiversity is one thing. Similarly, what land degradation is one thing. Similarly, another one would be what climate change. So these are the three large issues that the world community as such recognizes and fights to contain its impacts. So biodiversity, land degradation, and climate change, which is also important in environmental geography also. So I think land degradation and climate change are few topics that we come across most often. Biodiversity അത്രയും വരാറില്ലെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. So these are the issues. Now to manage the negative effects caused by all these things, we need environmental. All these are called as environmental degradation. These are the ways in which biodiversity, the animal flora, faunal floral assemblage is declining, land quality decline, climate മൊത്തത്തിൽ മാറുന്നു. That is environmental degradation. Several other things can be added, other subpoints like pollution, things can be added, but generally this is to environmental degradation. Now in environmental geography, our concern is about environmental management to deal with these issues in an adaptive manner and in a mitigative manner. That is environmental management, and there is environmental management is carried out to environmental policies. So this is the rest of the things. All these three aspects are what we are left in environmental geography. We'll be able to see that. Now, biodiversity, we know what biodiversity. What is what? എന്താണ് biodiversity? What is biodiversity? എല്ലാവർക്കും ഒരു ഐഡിയ ഉള്ള ടോപ്പിക് തന്നെയാണ് ബയോഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റി, പക്ഷെ അത് കൃത്യമായിട്ട് പറയുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ഇത്തിരി കാര്യം. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ, if I am to give a simple definition, that is what the total diversity of life forms on the planet is basically what biodiversity is. Okay, it could be at different levels. It could be at genetic levels, ecosystem levels, species level. So different at genetic, ecosystem, or species level, different type of things are there. Now biodiversity can be measured in different manner: alpha, beta, gamma. We are mostly familiar with this thing. Now one thing that it's mostly important is how we are into the sixth mass extinction, that is characterized by sixth mass extinction. So there is what extinction species phenomena is there. Extinction, speciation, extinction. And there is we have also seen what is mass extinction. So we are the sixth stage of mass extinction. So what are the causes that are leading to sixth mass extinction? That is one thing we will be studying here. So different type of biodiversity, different ways of measuring biodiversity, and you have the sixth mass extinction, and how do we deal with that? This is basically the things we are going to discuss in a short session, in a short manner here. So we'll write a few things about biodiversity first. Biodiversity is an important topic in GS, similarly also in optional paper. Biodiversity is richness or variety of life found. Biodiversity is richness or variety of life found on Earth. Life found on Earth at all its levels. Which levels? From genetic to ecosystem. It is a sum total of all genes, species, and ecosystem that are found in a particular region. It includes the diversity of flora, fauna, and other taxa. Plants and animals, other taxa are also there. Other life forms are also there. Just writing a few words about different types of diversity. Three diversities are there. Genetic diversity refers to all the type and variety of genes, that are found within the species of an ecosystem or a region, within a species. Species diversity or variety of species found within a particular region is what? Species diversity. This one. And ecosystem diversity is variety of ecosystem which are found in a particular region or area. Ecosystem diversity refers to variety of ecosystems which are found in a region. Okay. Now, what are the factors controlling biodiversity? Biodiversity controlling the factors. എന്തൊക്കെയാണ്? Any idea? Biodiversity control ചെയ്ത ഫാക്ടേഴ്സ് ആണ്. ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ചേഞ്ച് നമ്മൾ പൊതുവെ പറയുന്നതാണ്. ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ചേഞ്ച് തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും ആണ്. ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ചേഞ്ചിനേക്കാൾ നമുക്ക് ക്ലൈമറ്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി. Because climate change is something specifically we mention when we go for reduction in biodiversity. So if you're looking at നമ്മൾ നേരത്തെ പഠിച്ച കാര്യം തന്നെയാണ്. എന്താണ്? Environmental conditions and historical conditions. Environmental conditions would be leading to temperature, different temperature, sunlight, water, etc., and the tolerance and range of organisms to this response. Historical would include about again speciation, dispersal, extinction, etc. So after extinction, what will happen? The biodiversity would be lesser than the other region. So same phenomena. So just Just an idea, environmental factors and processes, biological factors and other biological fact and environmental and biological factors historical factors which we already know. Now, what are the ways in which biodiversity is destroyed or threats to biodiversity? What are the main factors that causes threats to biodiversity? That's what's the main concern now. Now, if you're looking at environmental degradation ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു എലമെന്റ് ആണ് ബയോഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റി. ബയോഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റിക്ക് ത്രെറ്റ് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന എന്തൊക്കെ ഘടകങ്ങളാണ് ഉള്ളത് എന്നാണ് വി ആർ ചെക്കിങ്. സോ ഫസ്റ്റ് വൺ എന്താണ്? ഹാബിറ്റാറ്റ് ഡിസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ. One of the major factors that is behind habitat biodiversity loss is habitat destruction. So invasion of you can go give this HIPCO framework or HIPCO. Okay, habitat destruction we already see. Environmental decay എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഫോറസ്റ്റ് ഫ്രാഗ്മെന്റേഷൻ, എഡ്ജ് എഫക്റ്റ് കൂടുന്നു, സ്പീഷീസുകൾ കുറയുന്നു, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ടോട്ടലി താമസിക്കാനുള്ള ഏരിയ ഹൈ എന്താണ് ഹാബിറ്റാറ്റബിൾ ഏരിയ തന്നെ കുറയുന്നു. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വൺ റീസൺ. സെക്കൻഡ് വൺ ഈസ് ഇൻവേസീവ് ഏലിയൻ സ്പീഷീസ്. ഏലിയൻ സ്പീഷീസിന്റെ കാര്യം ഞാൻ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്തതാണ്. These are species which are introduced beyond what their normal living conditions. For example, normal living organism range of tolerance idairikkum, but an invasive species would be somewhere maybe like this. So in that small region it would be having high elasticity of growth. So maximum ivada ithrayum valarunna oru sthalathe growth ulla sthalathe this particular invasive species will grow multiple times more than, or their reproductive capacity would be much more than the normal crop there. So this will basically what lead us to decline of biodiversity, mostly crop, other animals too. Okay, now what is what invasive and invasive species? Now that is population and economic development. Now population and economic development is equally an issue when it leads to urbanization, cutting down of forest, economic development if you are looking at mines which are created in forested regions, things like that. Okay, so what do you call as population and economic development? You can use the Malthusian idea again here. But when the resource gap is increasing, you can see there's a gap between, and this gap will lead to more more pressure on land to provide resources. That will again lead to lack of providence for plants and animals to grow, and they'll die out. So that's one. Now the next one is pollution. Right, pollution makes a living habitat lead to environmental degradation, maybe land degradation, water degradation, soil degradation, and the lifespan of species will be declining. Okay, now then what? Climate change and or exploitation of resources. Okay, climate change again, we know like it alters the environmental conditions and thus makes it hard for animals to live. Or exploitation of resources, maybe good forest or exploitation by humans will lead to forest decline, minerals over exploitation, water resources or exploitation will lead to groundwater shrinking. That will again negatively influence or impact life forms which are dependent on these factors. So HIPCO can be considered as a perspective, as a framework or a pseudonym to understand the different dimensions of biodiversity decline: habitat protection, invasive species, population and growth, pollution, climate change, and other factors or other over exploitation of resources. Okay, so ഇത്രയും കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് നമുക്ക് ഈ ഒരു കാര്യത്തിൽ ഓർത്തിരിക്കാനുള്ളത്. എക്സാമ്പിൾസ് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു രണ്ടു മൂന്നെണ്ണങ്ങൾ. ക്ലൈമറ്റ് ചേഞ്ചിന്റെ കാര്യത്തിലാണെങ്കിൽ കൺസെപ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ടോളറൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. ആ ടോളറൻസ് റേഞ്ചിലുള്ള പാരാമീറ്റേഴ്സിന്റെ range മാറുന്നു അതനുസരിച്ച് animals are not able to easily adapt to it. They'll take some time. By that time, some of the old species will be extinct and new species will be coming in. So that's one thing. Okay, clear? Several examples can be given. For example, habitat destruction and decline of elephant population in India is one example. Earlier it was spread throughout India, but habitat destruction went to what? Different islands of forest area has been created. So animals which used to travel from one part of the forest to other parts of the forest find it difficult sometimes due to fragmentation. So that's the issue. And we've been hearing suggestions about elephant corridors. It is in this context. Corridors will be laid to reduce the impact of fragmentation and provide dispersal route. Okay. I think it's clear. Okay, fair enough. Now, the next topic we have is that we have all these issues. Climate change, you would have seen it a lot more times, like in detail. So I think we should not waste much time on that. Climate change എല്ലാവർക്കും എന്തായാലും അറിയാവുന്നതാണ്. അതിന്റെ കൺസെപ്റ്റുകൾ അതൊക്കെ തന്നെ ഉള്ളൂ. കൂടുതലായിട്ടൊന്നും ജോഗ്രഫി ചോദിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നില്ല. നമുക്കറിയാവുന്ന കൺസെപ്റ്റുകൾ തന്നെ അതിന്റെ അപ്ലൈഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കും അത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ. പിന്നെ നിങ്ങൾ ക്ലൈമറ്റോളജിയിൽ മിക്കവാറും പഠിച്ചതാണ്. Now we go into environmental degradation. Okay, all these factors will lead to what? Environmental degradation. In fact, causes of environmental degradation is related to two factors. That is hazards and disasters, and then there is pollution. Okay, environmental degradation is basically related with two type of one, that is hazards and disasters and pollution. Hazards and disasters are done. For example, landslide ഉണ്ടാകുമ്പോൾ there will be environmental degradation. Tsunami ഉണ്ടാകുമ്പോൾ there will be environmental degradation, things like that. So hazard will mean what? Rapid change in quality of the environment. Pollution would be more gradual change in quality of the what do you call us, the environment. Okay, so that is environmental degradation for you. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഈ environmental degradation നമ്മൾ ചെറുതായിട്ട് മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്ന കൺസിഡർ ഫ്രെയിംവർക്ക്സ്. Then we have to basically look at environmental management. എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് ചെയ്യാവുന്നത്, ഏതൊക്കെയാണ് principles of governing environmental management. Those things need to be seen. Okay, so environmental degradation ചെറുതായിട്ടൊന്ന് എഴുതാം. Okay, environmental degradation refers to something related to decay, but environmental degradation is the larger term than environmental decay. That is to be kept in mind. It refers to lowering in the quality of environment. In geography, it has wider implications. Generally, it refers to lowering in quality of environment, but in geography, environment has wider implication. It can simply mean physical environment, or it can also be, in geography, environment has wider implications. It can simply mean physical environment, and in broad sense, it can also include the human environment. That is social plus culture. Human environment. If there is greater animosity increasing, in world and global levels, It is also a form of environmental degradation. That is the human aspect. We come back to the narrow sense. In narrow sense, environmental degradation is lowering of quality of physical environment. In a narrow sense, environmental degradation refers to lowering of quality of physical environment. Bracket lithosphere, atmosphere, biosphere. Right. Such an environmental degradation can be cause of two different factors, that is hazards and disasters or pollution. Okay, that is environmental degradation. There are several forms of environmental degradation. For example, there is sea level change is there, land degradation is there, wetland destruction is there. But we are not going into that. We have just understand how these things are happening. Environment is there is hazard and disaster is there, and there is environmental degradation caused by pollution also is there. Right. Now, after that, we have to look at environmental management. We can look into several things. What is the concept of environmental management? What's the need for environmental management? And several other so on and so forth. So let's see. ആദ്യം നമുക്ക് environmental management എന്താണെന്ന് എഴുതാം. What is concept of environmental management? Environmental management is difficult to define due to complexities associated with the two terms environment and management. Complexity associated with two terms environment and management. Because both generating different point of view. Environment may be defined as sum total of conditions environment may be defined as sum total of conditions within which organisms live. It's a result of interaction between non-living and living components. So interaction between non-living and living components. Controversy arises in whether to include all the living beings or only the human beings. എല്ലാരെയും കൂട്ടണം, human beings മാത്രം കൂട്ടണം എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ചോദ്യം. Management is also a difficult term to define. Because it arises the question whether whether management should be from ecocentric perspective or technocentric perspective. Question where management should be from ethnocentric or technocentric perspective. Whether management should be top down or bottom up. അടുത്ത dimension of confusion, whether management should be top down or bottom up, or whether if should include all areas, or should exclude some areas. So in order to write a small definition, we'll write this way. Despite these difficulties, it can be asserted that environment management is a process concerned with human environment interaction. And seeks to identify what is environmentally desirable. And seeks to enjoy what is environmentally desirable. Environmentally desirable. What seeks to identify what is environmentally desirable. What are the physical, economic, and technological constraints? What are the physical, environment, and technological constraints to achieving that? And what are the most feasible options? So it looks into how it can be achieved and ascertain what are the most feasible options. Broadly speaking, it is an approach which goes beyond natural resource management to encompass the political and social well-being. Along with that of environmental well-being. Okay, now we have to identify certain justification or why the need for environmental management. There are certain concerns which necessitates environmental management principles, like need for environmental management. Okay, these are can be considered as justification. For example, economic justification, which talks about there needs to be a steady supply of resources to production. Now, if you run out, or if you runs out of a particular raw material, what the production will decline, and hence to ensure smooth delivery of that raw material, environment management or resource management is necessary. The other one is ecological principle. What is that? It's about sustaining the services that are being provided and to keep the services flowing. You cannot stop in between. Now there is similarly aesthetic justification. The need to protect forest, hilly regions, etc., can be seen from an aesthetic perspective also. There is moral justification. Moral justification will include what every species has the right to live, things like that. And cultural justification, because every environmental aspect has a cultural meaning attached to it. cultural justification. So these are the five needs which are there, which calls for environmental protection. We'll write it in a small sense. So when you are given an answer, what are the factors that promotes environment management, or what are the necessary ideas that helps to the development of environment management as such, or some other topic on environment management, you can make use of this points, not just directly but indirectly for some other topic also. Okay. So need for environmental management is a heading. Justification for environment management can be categorized into different headings. So first of all, economic justification. Economic justification. Sustainable item, raw material. It stems from the needs of individual. Economic justification stems from the needs of individuals and societies for environmental resources and gain economic benefits. To access individual and society stems from the needs of individual and societies for environmental resources to gain economic benefits. For example, agriculture. Agriculture is highly dependent on the health of the ecosystem or the environment. So for a healthy agriculture production, what you do, you need to preserve the ecosystem, or rather ecosystem must be managed well. So that is the economic justification. Now ecological justification. Ecological justification is rooted in the necessity of sustaining life support functions of the ecosystem. Just a second. Okay. Sustaining life support functions of the ecosystem. Although they have no direct benefit to individuals, but are essential to healthy functioning of regional and global ecosystems. So the concept like environmental services, ecological services provided by environment. For that, again, environmental management is very necessary. Take the case of any ecosystem. For example, if you look at coral reefs are very significant, very essential for what? Marine wealth. If you have to go for fishing, you need fishes there. For fishes, it needs some habitat for its young ones to fishlings to grow, and that is mostly provided by coral reefs. Okay, so that is one case for that. Next one is aesthetic justification. It comes from human perception of the natural world. It comes from the human perception of natural world, which claims that from the natural perception of human world, which claims that biological and landscape diversity but biological and landscape diversity adds to quality of human existence. These diversities adds to quality of human existence. For example, Tuan are good. Tuan area of Tuan. humanistic geography പഠിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. Tuan has argued towards the significance of wilderness in modern world. Wilderness, forest in human world, where in the modern world, where people want to escape from their hectic, lives to the peaceful surroundings of wild environments. So that's a compelling motive for protection of environment or environmental management, right? Moral justification. It relies on the belief that non-human elements of environment, elements of the environment have equal right of existence, or equal have right to exist independently of humans. Independently of human, and that humans have a moral responsibility to preserve them. Humans have a moral responsibility to preserve them. This has been UN General Assembly several declarations has highlighted this. Species have moral rights to exist, not just human beings. So that's how we understand that situation. That's the rights of human. So we have animal rights and things like that, right? Now, cultural justification, the last one. Indigenous people depend upon their local ecosystem. Indigenous people depend upon their local ecosystem for survival. A reduction in biodiversity of such ecosystems. A reduction in diversity of such ecosystems may render indigenous people more poor. Make the indigenous people more poor. Okay, so those are the causes claim the what? Those are the claims towards why we should manage, or why should manage our environment. Environment management the basis, right? Now, one of the main tools which environmental management is achieved is basically it's the environmental policies. Okay, environmental policies, different policies are there. For example, wildlife policy, national policy on anything, national policy on maybe pollution, plastic waste, development. Different policies are there, laws, Biodiversity Act, Environmental Act. So these are the measures, the tools through which we are trying to achieve environmental management. Right. Now, when you look at it, we have understood the causes. The need for environment management has been understood. Now we have to understand what are the principles that guides environmental policies. Right. That's the next thing to understand. So there are about 6 principles which plays a critical role in formulation of policies. Okay. Now that can be divided into 2 dimensions. That is environmental protection principle, the principles which focus on environmental protection, but at the same time, the principles which also talks about social principles. So 6 principles are there. Some of them are concerning environmental protection. The other are with respect to social angles. Now let's see what all these are. If you look at environmental principles, first principle obviously we'll be knowing ഏതാണ് principle of sustainability. Obviously നമ്മൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമാണ് principle of sustainability. Second one would be ഏതാണ് second one would be the polluter pays principle. That who is the one who is polluting the environment is responsible to pay, or rather responsible for fixing that environment. Now third is precautionary principle. That is basically talking about before say a measure is taken, a new policy is taken, it should be ensured that it should not have it is not going to have any harmful impact on environment. For example, if you are bringing in a GM crop, you have to basically think of every prospect in which it can cause a damage to the environment, and then check it if it actually does that damage. If it is not doing the damage only, you should be going for that particular policy. So that's the third one. Now with respect to social angle, you have the participatory principle. Participation, either different stakeholders must be involved in what in policy making. That is, participation needs to be ensured. Equality alla equity. For example, polluter pays principle dimension than equity. What is that? The one who is disadvantaged should not be expected to share the same burden. And human rights principle. What environment is a human right. People have to have the right to exploit environment for their basic needs, right? So this much is what we are seeing with respect to what are the principles that goes into policy formulation. Now we'll write a few words about this one. First one, the principle of sustainability. What is that? The principle of sustainability is associated with the idea of limited carrying capacity of the earth. Is tied with the limited carrying capacity of the earth, right? The Birdland Commission of 1980 Commission of Bird, it has defined sustainability as sustainable development as sustainability or sustainable development as development inverted comma development that meets the needs of the present, development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, right? So that's the main thing about sustainable development. We know that what is sustainable development, so not going into too much detail with that. So we have several principles with respect to that now. Say combat differentiated responsibility, ecological footprint, fair share of earth concept, ecological footprint what reuse, reduce, recycle, sustainable development which can be written there. Now the next principle is polluter pays principle. Okay. According to this principle, the polluter pays principle, company or an enterprise or an enterprise either has to pay to prevent either has to pay to prevent pollution, or pay for the damages that it causes. Governments usually adopt the following policies to ensure that the polluter pays. Can be achieved through following steps. First one, regulating pollutants that can be emitted to the environment. Regulating the pollutants that can be discharged into the environment. Charging polluter taxes and levies. And third one, making polluter liable for the damages caused. Okay, several ideas have been brought forward. For example, extended producer responsibility, which makes the manufacturer responsible for entire the life cycle of the product, from production till its collection and waste management. Extended producer responsibility is one idea in this polluter pays principle direction. So there is carbon trading practices that is there. All these are such things. Okay. So that's a second principle. Now the third principle is the precautionary principles. So sometimes the question is asked how frame a suitable policy for climate change or water pollution in India. So we can use these. This principle is this principle vechittu namukku point generate cheyyam. Okay, precautionary principles. Okay, when human activities may lead to unacceptable harm to society and environment. When human activities may lead to unacceptable harm to society and environment, that is scientifically plausible but uncertain. Society and environment that is scientifically plausible but uncertain. Action shall be taken to avoid or diminish such harms. Action shall be taken to avoid or diminish that harm. Such a judgment of full stop. Next one. Next paragraph. Next line. Sorry. Such a judgment of plausibility should be based upon scientific principles and analysis. Example, ban on GM food crops in India is based upon the principle of precaution or precautionary principle. Now the equity principle. Equity implies a need for fairness in the distribution of gains and losses. A need for fairness in the distribution of gains and losses so that everyone is entitled. So that everyone is entitled to an acceptable quality of life. To an acceptable quality of life. Three aspects of equity can be identified. People have certain rights that must be respected. Respected. People get what they deserve. That is fairness. Second aspect. Third one. People's needs should be met. People's needs should be met, particularly the basic ones. Okay. Now, next one is participation principle. Human rights include the rights of individual citizens and groups to participate. And citizens and groups to participate in shaping the decisions and policies that affect them. In shaping the policies and decisions that affect them. In fact, environmental issues are best handled. Environmental issues are best handled with participation of all concerned citizens at relevant levels. The participation of concerned citizens at all relevant levels. Okay. So the last one is human rights principle. Human rights are entitlements based on morality, justice, and fairness. This is a fairness which nations of the world have agreed. Nations of the world have agreed that all people ought to have. Example, okay, and fairness which the nations of world have agreed all people ought to have. Example is right to life, liberty, health, etc. Human rights apply to every human beings throughout their life. No matter the conditions, human rights apply to every human beings throughout their life, no matter the conditions. And some rights cannot be limited in any way. Some rights cannot be limited in any way, even in emergency or war. The environmental conditions in turn helps to determine the extent to which people enjoy the extent to which people enjoy basic rights of life, health, food, housing, etc. Thus, it becomes imperative to ensure. Thus, it becomes imperative to ensure health of environment so that human rights are not compromised. This in turn means that people have rights to exploit. This in turn means that people have right to exploit natural resources to ensure their survival. Natural resources to ensure their survival, although to an extent where such environmental rights of others are not jeopardized. Although to an extent where the environmental rights of others are not jeopardized. So, environmental rights human beings have the right to exploit nature. So that is again, that right to exploit nature is fundamentally part of environmental policy. It's a foundation principle of environmental policy. Okay, now the principles have been seen. We can also look into what are the subcomponents of environmental policy. What are the components that makes an environmental policy? Before that, an effective environmental policy. See, environmental policy and define environmental policy is an instrument which tries to bring about environmental control and management. Okay, that is on environmental policy. Now, an effective environmental policy is the one which considers local conditions, regional considerations, regional in nature, national in character. Similarly, it has continental nature, and which also have a global one. So, an effective policy, effective environmental policy should account for all these matters. Okay, so every levels it should be having relevance in each level. Like for example, it is globally created, but it's not. If it is not suited to local conditions, that is not good. So when a policy is made, there will be global goals, global policies would be there. Then there would be each nation would be devising their own policy, which again will be decentralized in a decentralized manner, would be applied in the local level. Okay, so it should cater the needs of the local and the global, the similar manner, in an effective manner. Okay, so that's what required from environmental policy. Now it composes of different subcomponents. First one is the advisory component. One is the advisory component. Second is an economic component, and there is a regulatory component. So these three purposes should be done by an environmental policy. First, there should be, for example, if the case of climate change, there should be a economic component which disincentivizes polluting fuels and incentivizes what do you call as clean fuels. There should be regulatory actions which should ensure standardization, licensing of these technologies. Maybe perhaps ban something like furnace oil. Furnace oil was polluting fuels in a ban. Then there is advisory component to advise to build awareness, those kind of measures, right? So we'll also write that to subcomponents. What are the different components required by an environmental policy? First one is advisory component. For a policy formulate, we have three elements. Advisory component includes a component of advice, information and demonstration. Advice, information and demonstration demonstration in order to generate effective environmental awareness, and education, so that participation of all the stakeholders in the formulation and implementation of the policy can be achieved. So if you are spreading awareness only, like when people are not aware about climate change or whatever environmental degradation issue is there, people will not be able to participate in that. So earlier we had said that we need a participation. You need participation. For participation to be fruitful, you need to inform the people about that. That's first thing. Second one is economic component. It includes taxes, subsidies, grants, quota, stewards, different resources and elements that affect the environment. Carbon tax can be an example. Pollution tax can be an example. Third one is regulatory component. Regulatory components deals with standardization, restriction, and licensing. Standardization, restriction, and licensing with respect to potentially damaging activities or processes. So they are just regulating it, like perhaps licensing. That's the thing. Okay, so these are the basic components of an effective environmental policy. Environmental policy principles and we have also looked into the components that should be there. So, and besides that, it need to be implementable and relevant for both from a global to local scale. Okay, so that's for environmental policy. I think we covered all the dimensions of environmental geography in that. Okay, I think it is clear. Break it again, and when we'll come back, we'll finish some of the portions left behind. For example, climatic regions of India, we'll look into that. Clear? Okay, so we'll take a break. It's 3:15, right? It's 3:12. We'll meet by 3:30. Okay. Okay, all right. Okay. Everybody here? All right, sure. Thank you. So we have to study few topics that are left. One is climatic regions, which is given just now. Few things are energy crisis, soil, and some natural resources. This major topic is left behind. So we'll start with climatic regions. The first climatic region, this is kind of picture that I have drawn, so kind of looks little kind of like that. So okay, so this is the climatic region, that is classification provided by STAMP. STAMP's classification basically functions on STAMP divides India's regions on the basis of one isotherm, that is the 18-degree isotherm, which is somewhere like this. Like this. This is the 18-degree isotherm. The 18-degree isotherm that is there, which divides India into two parts. That's basically the tropical and or what the subtropical part, or the tropical or the temperate continental part. So that's basically the classification is doing. And based on that's first one, based on temperature. Now, based on further characteristic, that is rainfall, the areas are classified again into different subunits. So first classification is basically the temperature classification based on 18-degree isotherm during the winter months, right? And then further based on the different type of rainfall. So there is rainfall region, this arid region, the Himalayan region. You have the Malabar coast where there is a lot of rainfall is divided. In that way, it is divided into Himalayan region first. Second one, the northwestern region. Third, the arid lowlands of the Rajasthan, Gujarat part. Moderate rainfall regions of the western and central UP. Transition zone of what is called as transition zone whereby rainfall is increasing, that is the Bihar region. Now you have the very high rainfall region of the northeast, right? High rainfall region of the Bengal, eastern India, and then 8 moderate rainfall of Maharashtra Plateau and Karnataka Plateau, 9 Konkan Coast and Malabar Coast, which is again high rainfall region, Tamil Nadu, which is a less rainfall region. Okay, so this is the way it is classified. The basis of the classification is more important. That is two factors, that is the 18-degree isotherm and the rainfall characteristics. Okay, so we'll write a few things, then I'll share some of the notes with respect to each of this region. I'll compile a note and share you, so you can read it further from there, which is basically static information. So how this classification has been arrived at, we'll write as a note. STAMP's classification of Indian climate. STAMP's classification of Indian climate is an empirical arbitrary and subjective one, that uses quantitative limits to the regions, in easily understood units like temperature and rainfall. stamp used 18 degrees Celsius isotherm, 18 degrees Celsius isotherm of mean monthly temperature, 18 degree Celsius isotherm of mean monthly temperature for January to divide the country into two broad climatic regions. Two broad climatic regions. That is a temperate or continental zone in the north, a temperate or continental India in the north, and B, tropical India in the south. The 18 degree isotherm runs roughly across the root of peninsula, more or less along the Tropic of Cancer. The two major climatic regions are further divided into 11 regions, depending upon the amount of rainfall and temperature. Yes. And the divisions are as I given. This is the division. Up to 5, that is the temperate continental zone, and this is the from 6 to 11 you have the tropical zone. So please draw that. We'll try to draw it here again, so you can draw alongside me. So first one would be like this. This is one, which is the Himalayan region. Then the second one would be about connecting it to the isotherm. Let's draw the isotherm in red colors now. Okay. Now this is small region is the second region, which is a semi-arid region, and the third one is an arid region. Now we have the fourth region here, which is what the region of moderate rainfall. Then you have the fifth region, which is of more rainfall, what is known as a transition zone from an arid to more rainfall region. Now after that, here again you have this same climate, which is the Himalayan climate. Now sixth region is the region of very high rainfall. Border would be small like this. This is the zone of very high rainfall. Then you have the seventh zone, which is somewhere like this. This is the seventh zone. And you have the coastal plains, two coastal plains, that is the 9 and the 8, which is divided here. And then you have the, in between you have the 8th zone, which is again the interior Maharashtra, those region, and also the 10 and 11, the Tamil Nadu and the western coastline. So this would be the different regions where you get different kinds of rainfall. So Tamil Nadu region would be having less rainfall. The Konkan and Malabar coast will be having higher rainfall. Okay, the details we can, I'll give it as a supplementary reading material. Now, on the other hand, you have also one more classification, which is the Köppen's classification, which if you have read the Köppen is an easy thing. Just we are superimposing the Köppen's finding. For example, Köppen had variations like A, B, C, D, E, if you remember. we have till D and some regions of E. So A is the region of heavy, very high summer temperature and rainfall. So that can be visible to the south, again to the south of Tropic of Cancer. So this Tropic of Cancer is dividing India into tropical and subtropical regions. So that is basically the parameter of climate division. So all the regions to the south will be either A or B. B because it is desert situation. A because there is good rainfall. Now A kind of would be within A climate there is AM, which is monsoon. A monsoon with winter dry season. AS with what? Summer rainfall. Summer dry season. Summer winter rainfall. That is summer dry. That is AS. AW is what? A winter rainfall. Winter dry. Sorry. Winter dry. Now remember one thing. There is first, second, third level of classifications. First level is A, B, C, D, E. Then there is summer dry, winter dry, monsoon rainfall throughout the year. That is F, and monsoon type is also given. So here, one type is characterized as the west coast is characterized as AMW. That is A, monsoon, winter dry. Now AS, this is particular region namakariya ivide monsoon rainfall illa, namakku northeast monsoon rainfall aanallo winter season. So that is region of A, summer dry season and winter rainfall. Now rest of the peninsula, if you look at AW, in the sense that I did tropical climate with winter dry season and summer rainfall. Now BSHW is a different one, which is B refers to semi-arid condition where water deficiency, precipitation is less than evapotranspiration. BSHW. Now S is for steppe type of climate. It's not exactly what desert. It's more of a steppe climate. So BS, we have BW, which is the desert region. So BS is given B for the semi-arid condition, and S for steppe, right, like thorny, those kind of vegetation. H for hot, and W for winter dry. Are you following me? Your classification ഓർമ്മയുണ്ടോ? Classification ഓർമ്മയുണ്ടോ? Can you remember? And I'm telling you, he divided into A, B, C, D, E, and F. So A is for annual temperature greater than 18 degrees Celsius in all season. B is water stress based. C, the temperature in winter season is less than 18 degrees Celsius. So that was basically the classification Köppen has made, climatology. Okay, I think you guys are remembering it. Fine. Now I will explain the other regions also. CWG, because here the summer rainfall, winter temperature is less than 18 degrees Celsius. Again, that's the same thing. He also saying 18 degree isotherm. So because of that, this particular to the north of Tropic of Cancer, we have subtropical climate. So C is given. Now W is again winter dry because most of the rainfall is in summer season. And G and Ganga type. In the last fourth order classification, he has made a modification, allowed for a modification, that is Ganga type. All right. Then similar climate is found here. BWHM is B for again dry climate. HW for desert kind of type. H for again hot, winter. W for winter dry. And E, polar region. D, okay, tundra, taiga, that's the differentiation. DFC is again another, the next one falls in the category. D is when mid latitude rainy climate with the coldest month temperature below -3. So that's the condition. Whereas E is polar climate with no warm season. Always average temperature is below 10 degrees Celsius. So we studied that. F for no dry season. C for cool summer. So DFC. Okay. So this is the classification. Now what you have to study is that the basis of this classification. So ABCD would be the basis of classification for Köppen, which you have studied already. Now you would explain that again for India climatic classification, because in Indian climate എങ്ങനെയാണ് ക്ലാസിഫൈ ചെയ്തത്? കോപ്പൺ സിസ്റ്റത്തിന്റെ ബേസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്റ്റാമ്പ് സിസ്റ്റത്തിന്റെ ബേസ്. അപ്പൊ അവർ യൂസ് ചെയ്തിരുന്ന ബേസിക്സ് എന്താണോ അത് നമ്മൾ പിന്നെ അവിടെ എഴുതും, പിന്നെ മാപ്പ് വരയ്ക്കും, ആൻഡ് ഓരോ റീജിയനെ കുറിച്ചിട്ട് നമ്മൾ ഡീറ്റെയിലിംഗ് കൊടുക്കും. മോസ്റ്റ്ലി ഇറ്റ്സ് ബീൻ സ്റ്റാമ്പ്സ് ക്ലാസിഫിക്കേഷൻ. കോപ്പന്റേത് അധികം ചോദിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. സോ വി ക്യാൻ study stamp in more close quarters. No, with close more focus, you can study stamps classification. Okay, so that is climatic classification of India. Now there is the climatic classification of Trevartha, Thorndike, everything is there, which is basically nothing but the application of the other theories, but not so important. I won't feel like those questions would be asked anytime soon. Okay. Now what we have left is energy crisis, some of the biotic resources, etc. So biotic resources biotic resources is more important from the perspective of fisheries. That's the one region which we had questions asked about. Okay, hold on a second. If you are looking into the biotic resources that is generally available in the Indian context, the questions have mostly been on fisheries, right? Now fisheries, if you look at, there are two types of fisheries in India, that is marine fisheries and what do you call us, the freshwater fisheries. Okay, that is the aquatic resources of India. Marine. Now, marine can be found as both marine. Okay, sorry, so I missed it there. It is basically aquatic resources, marine and freshwater. Now, as far as fisheries are concerned, inland fisheries in India is greater than marine fisheries. More fish catch comes from inland fisheries. India is one of the largest, in fact, largest producer of fisheries and second largest producer of inland fisheries. Right, inland is very important. It employs about 14 million people, provides employment to 14 million people, and that in that way it is very significant. Now if you look at marine fisheries as such, there is two parts to India, right? You have the western coastline, you have the eastern coastline. Now you can say that the western coastline, west accounts for about 75% of fish landings, and east accounts for about 25% of fish landings. Right, there is different varieties of fishes available. India is relatively rich. For example, some of the species include mackerel. 1/3 of the catch is of mackerel fishes. Then there is prawns, which is famous. Prawns is there. Indian salmon is there. Can remember a couple of names. The question will be asked on fisheries in India, its potential and its challenges and bottlenecks, etc. So sardine is another common one. So you can remember 3 to 4 names. When you are asked about potential, you can easily write about those few species. If you look at this offshore and deep sea, you have huge potential for catch, but poorly developed, and the realization of the potential is very limited. Now this is about the marine conditions. Now inland conditions, this would be similar with the rivers and lakes in India. So if the inland potential is asked for, you can basically draw a map of India, show the main rivers. So Ganga, one of them would be Ganga, Krishna, Godavari, all of its lower reaches. should be marked and be given as the most important areas of fisheries. Now, let's see some of look at the impediments with respect to fisheries. Few more points about freshwater is that it is growing faster than marine. It overtook marine fisheries in terms of production in 2001, right? But despite the large area, 95% of the inland is concentrated in littoral states. Although we speak about the large area of what rivers and etc., mostly these are still concentrated in the coastline, in the littoral states which are bordering bordering the sea. So it has to do with the dietary habits. The inland people are not so much used to fish fresh, and hence production is less. Now, some of the impediments to the development of fishery sector can also be seen, right? One is obviously the tropical weather. Tropical weather does not allow for, it's not the most suited one. It's good, but it's not most suited one. For example, catch is difficult and costly. Refrigeration is required. Refrigeration cost is high. Lack of good fishing ground. For example, you know the case of Newfoundland, Grand Banks, etc. They are mixing of on the cold water, upwelling, mixing of cold and warm water, lot of sediments. All these are advantageous things. Marine fishing in India is again seasonal because of the monsoon type and the climatic conditions like cyclone that is available. Dietary habits again limits aquaculture, that is the vegetarianism. Vegans are just about 40-50% of Indian population is vegan. That is another issue. Lack of technological development, lack of modern tech and infrastructure. For example, about 80% of the processing facility can be found in Kerala coastal. So you can imagine the condition in the rest of the parts of the country. Food processing is also absent. Tech and industry conditions are very limited. Now, on top of all that, you have unsustainable illegal fishing, which again leads to destruction of the fish wealth. It prevents the rejuvenation of the fish wealth, and thus over a period of time, the fish catch keeps on declining. This issue has been witnessed in Kerala coast. There was recently news about declining fish catch in Kerala coast too. Okay. So that much is what you can basically need to know about fishery sector in India. And you can obviously think about Blue Revolution, okay, Neel Kranti Mission, etc. These are some of the schemes that is taken up by government of India to promote fisheries, biotic resources, fish aquaculture, things like that. Okay. Fair enough. So that's a broad view of the fishery sector. Other natural vegetation and things are basically the NCERT knowledge. It's factual thing. Natural vegetation resources. These things are. I mean, that is not important to be dealt in class. You can just read a material, and you will get that. Again, I'll be providing that, so no worries there. Now, one more thing that we have left behind. Two things that we have left is one is soil. Soil is again, I think it's mostly we'll discuss it in brief. Soil is the same thing as GS. There is nothing much to do with soil. Soil related questions are limited. Some of the other important area with respect to soil is soil degradation and soil erosion, which I think has been dealt in the contemporary part. So that's cool there. Now, only thing left to soil is that the different types of soil found in India. Okay. Now, if you look at the different types of soil found in India, you can see there is clear demarcation. For example, there is alluvial soil, This is desert gradient of it. You have the coastal alluvium. Okay, roughly speaking. And in between, you have the black soil region. The black soil region. These two are the black soil region. Roughly speaking, I'm just giving a rough picture just to recollect what we have studied in GS. And all these are the red soil region. And in between, you have few regions where you have the peaty soil. You have the regions of forest soil. You have the alluvial soil. This is the way it is distributed, and you know the different features about each of these soil areas, right? So alluvial soil covers about 40% of India's area, alluvial, which is distributed along the Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra plain and coastal plains, and also the valleys of peninsular rivers. That's the main region they are distributed in, and they have some basic properties like they are formed over sedimentary rocks, weathering of highly fertile area, and which is then deposited due to river erosion, and deposited in those region, renewed annually. And if you look at the nature of nutrients, except for nitrogen, almost all the important nutrients are present, but it at the same hand suffers from salinization, alkalization, those kind of issues. On the other hand, very much suited for all type of agriculture, mostly most fertile soil of India. If you look at the soil properties, it's fine textured. So these things are there, which is factual in nature. I think you can do that. I would say you can focus on alluvial soil, can focus on black soil, and you can also focus on laterite soil. These are the three soils that is important in the sense that standalone question can be framed from these soils regions and their distribution, and also the other aspects, agricultural developmental aspects associated with these three soils. Black soil, we know these are volcanic soil, which has what some few properties like self-plowing properties, shrinking and expanding during dry and wet season. Water retention capacity is very high, very suited for cotton cultivation, also known as river soil. Right, cotton, sugarcane cultivation is very rich. In a way, second most fertile soil in India after alluvium soil. All these things, I'm sure you guys know. Okay, so soil is what GS is. Nothing more than that. Whenever the question is asked, I think the better way to go about is that you can use the question will be mostly be on soil, its properties, and beyond that, it will be asking about the other socio-economic developmental angles that is associated with soil. So that would be your industry, your resources area, the agricultural area. That would be what that is important in that regard. Now we have to look into a couple of details about the energy crisis and the energy consumption pattern that India has witnessed, or the patterns in India. Energy. Now, if you look at energy, India's energy use has doubled since 2000s, and India is the third largest energy consumer in the world. Right. But however, on the other hand, per capita consumption of India is 1/3 of world average. Now, India is the largest user for sure, but the average use compared to the population is very low, because that is again because about 250 million people has no access to electricity. And some of them who have access lacks day long access to energy. 24-hour access is limited. So that is the nature of regional variability. If you look into Delhi, it had about 600 kilowatt per hour per capita energy use. I think that it would be somewhere around 800 now. It would have increased. 2 years back, it was 600. So let's keep it to 600 few years back. I haven't seen the report since then. The report was like this. So, but for comparative purpose, say you can take it as 700 minimum. Now, Bihar, it's only about 70 kilowatt per capita per hour. Now, this is the difference between regional variability. So there is regional variability, lack of access, and that results to less per capita consumption in worldwide. Okay. Now, sectors which accounted for maximum energy use was industry, building, transportation, etc., which accounted for no one. Now, in India's case, in this context, regional variability and low per capita consumption, there comes in the challenge of energy security in the form of energy crisis. Energy crisis is basically that crisis which reflects in lack of continuous availability of energy caused by disruption of supply and also by increase in demand. So two aspects is there: supply shock, demand side shock, demand side effect. Demand is increasing. So in this situation, what happens? Supply, if supply decreases and demand increases, that is the issue of energy crisis. Now with the Ukraine Russia issue, we know that oil crisis is impacting India. Now, if you look at into it, 1973 we had a major oil crisis that impacted India. 1990s again, the oil crisis, which has in fact led to the foreign exchange crisis in India. 2008 there was again a crisis. Now 2020s we have again a crisis. Now the reasons for this crisis is mainly that India is highly dependent on imports for its oil requirements, for its energy requirement. Energy is mostly sourced from oil, petroleum energy, and that is mainly 80% of the petroleum is imported. Now, if you look at the aspects of energy crisis in India, say 2030, the demand would be again doubling over 2012 levels. Now, by 2030, if GDP grows at 6%, we will have about 2.5 lakh megawatt requirement. Now, on the other hand, we are not considering, but 6% would be this much of megawatt energy would be required. Okay, and that is we may have to build more than 75 megawatt energy to bridge the gap. Okay, so this is expected thing. There is a gap which we are expected to build by that time. Now, lack of access we have mentioned. Energy security is again a function of access, affordability, and availability. Affordability of petrol, we can correlate properly. Situation. Availability of energy material like oil is poorly available. That's again issue. Access, regional access is again an issue. So import dependence, emission, water affordability and the green sustainability of energy is again an issue. So on top of all these three aspects, we have the issue of sustainability of net zero emission targets, things like zero emission by 2070. That target has been overlapping with India's case. So that makes India's situation, energy security situation, even more vulnerable, right? I think other petroleum അങ്ങനെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ റിസോഴ്സ് അവൈലബിലിറ്റി ഒക്കെ നിങ്ങൾ റിസോഴ്സ് പഠിപ്പിച്ച അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പഠിപ്പിച്ചതാണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. So that is all right there. So these are the things that is to be remembered. Lack of access for about 250 million population we are said about. The dimensions of crisis should be clearly remembered. Lack of access, sectoral shortage is one thing. Availability, we can say sectoral electricity access. So limited, for example, industrial units, if they are not getting 24/7 electricity connection, they would be finding it different to competitively produce goods, and that will again lead to slow down the economic development. That is manufacturing, industrial manufacturing or agriculture faces this issue. Another one is import dependence. Might also write this too. Availability, import dependence is an issue where 80% of oil is imported. Keep that in mind. And then what I said is sustainability, that is emission. Emission is India is the third largest emitter now. That is again another issue. Now solutions can be Istanbul solutions under, again you study in GS, specifically GS concern. For example, infra development can be considered as a solution. Grids, electricity grids can be developed. Pipelines can be developed. More refineries and survey of potential resources can be developed. Moving into shifting to cleaner fuels. For example, natural gas, which is better than petroleum. And obviously you have solar, wind, such options, right? Then emission control measures. So if you look at BS6 stage, Bharat stage 6 is an effort towards that direction. Accelerate renewables. If you look at, you can go for EVs, electric mobility. EV mobility is another one. So such points can be improved, incorporated. So biodiesel policy is there, biodiesel mixing is there. Promoting public transport is another option. Even if you are going for scheme in solar, you can say one world, one grid by India, International Solar Alliance by India. These are other measures we can cite as solutions. So that would be about energy crisis. Energy crisis in the story, I just mentioned you, like these are the stages in which India faced crisis. 2020 again, we are going with petroleum prices are reaching about 170 barrel, $117 when the prices are of the same level. So that is again another concern you have to remember. Now on top of this, you have to remember the availability of coal, petroleum, oil, natural gases. That has been studied. I think you studied in the energy resources have already been taken up. So we can mix these two, energy security and these two. So whenever energy security comes in, remember these dimensions. Dimensions are the most crucial: the access, affordability, availability, and sustainability. Okay. So that needs to be kept in mind. I think that completes our portions. എന്തെങ്കിലും ക്ലിയർ ആകാത്ത കാര്യങ്ങളോ അങ്ങനെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടോ? Okay. Energy security focus ചെയ്യുക പുറമായിട്ട് വരുന്ന റീജിയൻസ് ആണ്. Yeah. So anything to add there? I think we അതും എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലായില്ല ഓപ്ഷൻ ഇപ്പോ ഓക്കെ ആ പറഞ്ഞു
ഓപ്ഷൻ ഇപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ ഓപ്ഷൻ ഇപ്പം അങ്ങനെ ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല. ഇപ്പൊ മെയിനായിട്ട് പ്രിലിംസിനാണ് ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്.
മനസ്സിലായി. പ്രിലിംസിൽ ഫോക്കസ്
പിന്നെ എൻവയറമെന്റിന്റെ ഇത് എങ്ങനെ നോക്കണമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞുതരാമോ?
പ്രിലിംസിന് വേണ്ടിയാണോ?
എൻവയറമെന്റ് അതേനെ
എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് GS എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് അല്ലേ പ്രിലിംസിന് വേണ്ടിയല്ലേ അതിൽ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ച?
അതേനെ
എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് വളരെ ഡൈനാമിക് ആയിട്ടൊരു പോർഷൻ ആണ്, വളരെ സ്കോറിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള പോർഷൻ ആണ്, വിച്ച് വി ഓൾ നോ. എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് നോക്കുമ്പോൾ എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് 2-3 ടൈപ്പ് ഓഫ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. ഒന്ന് സ്റ്റാറ്റിക് ആയിട്ട് നമുക്ക് നമ്മുടെ ശങ്കർ പോലത്തെ റെഫറൻസ് മെറ്റീരിയൽസിന് കിട്ടുന്ന ഒരു ബുക്ക് ഉണ്ട്, വിച്ച് ഐ തിങ്ക് യു ഹാവ് ടു റീഡ് ദാറ്റ് ബുക്ക് thoroughly. In the sense that it's not to read every page. No, it's not necessary. Couple of chapters are important, and the correct factual level chapters which is not required. So I think you'll be having an idea regarding that broadly. If not, I can suggest you a couple of chapters which are very important. Actually, I have the book with me. So some of the chapters include the first one, ecology, functions of ecosystem. Aതൊക്കെ full ആയിട്ട് ഈവൻ സിംഗിൾ പോയിന്റ്സ് വെച്ച് പഠിക്കേണ്ട ബുക്കുകൾ ചാപ്റ്റേഴ്സ് ആണ്. ഇക്കോസിസ്റ്റംസ്, ടെറസ്ട്രിയൽ ഇക്കോസിസ്റ്റംസ് ആൻഡ് അക്വാറ്റിക് ഇക്കോസിസ്റ്റം എല്ലാം പഠിക്കണ്ട, പക്ഷെ ലാർജർ കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഡീറ്റെയിൽസ് പഠിക്കാം. അതിന്റെ കുഞ്ഞു ഓർഗാനിസത്തിന്റെ ഡീറ്റെയിൽസും അതൊന്നും തന്നിരിക്കുന്നത് പഠിക്കണ്ടേ. ഇപ്പൊ ആദ്യത്തെ 2 ചാപ്റ്റർ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞതാണെങ്കിൽ എനർജി ഫ്ലോ, ഫുഡ് ചെയിൻ, ഫുഡ് വെബ്, ഇക്കോളജിക്കൽ പിരമിഡ്, ഇങ്ങനത്തെ ടോപ്പിക്സുകൾ ഫുള്ളി ഡീറ്റെയിൽ പഠിക്കണം. അതിൻ്റെ അകത്തൊരു സംശയമില്ല. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് പ്രിറ്റി മച്ച് റിക്വയർഡ്. Okay. Besides some of these chapters like renewable energy, environmental issues ഒന്നും ആ ചാപ്റ്റർ കുറെ ലെങ്തിയാണ്. എൻവയോൺമെന്റൽ പൊല്യൂഷൻ കുറെ ലെങ്തിയാണ്. പൊല്യൂഷൻ നല്ല ചാപ്റ്റർ ആണ്, മൊത്തം പഠിക്കണ്ട, പക്ഷെ കൺസെപ്റ്റുകളൊക്കെ പഠിക്കണം. പിന്നെ പ്രധാനമായിട്ടും പറയാനുള്ളത് കുറെ ആനിമൽ ഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ബുക്കൊക്കെ ഉണ്ട്, ചാപ്റ്റർ ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ട്. ആ ചാപ്റ്റർ ഒന്നും അധികം വായിക്കണ്ട, ഇൻ ദ സെൻസ് ദാറ്റ് ആ എല്ലാ ഓർഗാനിസത്തിയും നമുക്ക് പഠിച്ചിരിക്കാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. പിന്നെ കൺസർവേഷൻ എഫേർട്സ് എല്ലാം ഇമ്പോർട്ടന്റ് ആണ്. പ്രൊട്ടക്റ്റഡ് ഏരിയ നെറ്റ്വർക്ക് അവിടുന്ന് പഠിക്കണ്ട, നമുക്ക് ഞാൻ പറയാം എന്താ പഠിക്കേണ്ടതെന്ന്. ഷെഡ്യൂൾഡ് ആനിമൽസ് ഓഫ് വൈൽഡ് ലൈഫ് പ്രൊട്ടക്ഷൻ ആക്ട് ഭയങ്കര ഇമ്പോർട്ടന്റ് ആണ്, പക്ഷെ അതിന്റെ ഈ ചാപ്റ്ററുകൾ പെർസെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടന്റ് അല്ല. അപ്പോ ബ്രോഡ്ലി ഞാൻ സ്പീക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്ന കണ്ടന്റ് പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ എൻവയോൺമെന്റിനകത്ത് കൺസെപ്റ്റൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ പഠിക്കുക. ശങ്കർ പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ ശങ്കറിനകത്ത് കുറെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ വെറുതെ ഫാക്ച്വൽ ഇൻഫർമേഷൻസ് ഉണ്ട്, നോട്ട് റിക്വയർഡ്, അത് ആവശ്യമില്ല. പിന്നെ വേറൊരു കാര്യം പറയാനുള്ളത്, പ്രൊട്ടക്റ്റഡ് ഏരിയാസ്, വൈൽഡ് ലൈഫ് ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള കോഡിങ് ഭയങ്കര സിഗ്നിഫിക്കന്റ് ആണ്, വരാറുണ്ട്. അത് പഠിക്കാൻ 2 കാര്യങ്ങളാണ്. ഒന്ന് ജോഗ്രഫിയിൽ നിന്ന് പഠിക്കാം. നാച്ചുറൽ വെജിറ്റേഷൻ ജോഗ്രഫി പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഇന്ത്യയുടെ ക്ലൈമാറ്റിക് റീജിയൻസ് വെച്ചിട്ട് കൃത്യമായിട്ട് ഇന്ത്യയുടെ ക്ലൈമാറ്റിക് റീജിയൻസിനെ കൃത്യമായിട്ട് മനസ്സിലാക്കാം. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഏതൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ ഇത് പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ ഓരോ ഇക്കോസിസ്റ്റം പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഏതൊക്കെ സ്പീഷീസ് ഏതൊക്കെ സ്ഥലത്തുണ്ടാകുക അതിന്റെ കോറിലേഷൻസും പഠിക്കുക. പിന്നെ നമ്മൾ കറണ്ട് അഫയേഴ്സ് വായിക്കുമ്പോൾ കുറെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ കാണും, അത് നമുക്ക് ഓർത്തിരിക്കാൻ വളരെ എളുപ്പമായിരിക്കും. കറണ്ട് അഫയേഴ്സ് വരുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് കൂടുതലായിട്ടും ചോദിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത്. രണ്ടാമതൊരു കാര്യമുള്ളത്, UPSCക്ക് കുറെ ഫേവറേറ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള കുറെ ഏരിയാസ് ഉണ്ട്. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ സൗത്തും നോർത്ത് ഈസ്റ്റും ഭയങ്കര UPSCക്ക് ഫേവറേറ്റ് ആണ്. അതിൽ തന്നെ കുറെ സ്ഥലങ്ങളുണ്ട്. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ നീൽഗിരി, ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ സുന്ദർബൻസ്. ദീസ് ആർ വെരി UPSCക്ക് ഭയങ്കര ഫേവറേറ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള റീജിയൻസ് ആണ്. ഈ റീജിയൻസ് ഇങ്ങനെ കുറെ പഠിക്കാനുണ്ട്, വിച്ച് ക്യാൻ ബി സ്റ്റഡീഡ് ഗോയിങ് ടു പ്രീവിയസ് ഇയർ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ. പ്രീവിയസ് ഇയർ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസിലൂടെ പോയി ഈ കുറെ ലൊക്കേഷൻസ് നമുക്ക് ഫെമിലിയർ ആയിരിക്കണം. ദാറ്റ് ക്യാൻ ഓൾസോ ബി ഡൺ. സോ ഇങ്ങനെ 3 ലെയേർഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു പ്രിപ്പറേഷൻ ആണ് നമുക്ക് എൻവയോൺമെന്റിന് ആവശ്യം. കറണ്ട് അഫയേഴ്സ് ഈസ് വെരി വെരി ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ്. പിന്നെ കുറച്ച് ക്വസ്റ്റൻസ് ഒക്കെ റാൻഡം ആയിരിക്കും, അത് നമുക്ക് ടോട്ടലി പഠിച്ച കാര്യങ്ങൾ വെച്ച് ജോഗ്രഫി അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡിങ്ങും പിന്നെ എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് സ്പെസിഫിക് ആയിട്ട് വെച്ച കാര്യങ്ങൾ വെച്ചിട്ട് സോൾവ് ചെയ്യണം. ഇതാണ് ബ്രോഡ്ലി എനിക്ക് പറയാനുള്ളത്. അല്ലാതെ പറഞ്ഞെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് ക്വസ്റ്റൻസ് കണ്ടിട്ടേ പറയാൻ പറ്റും. എന്തോ ഓക്കെ. സോ ബാക്കി എല്ലാവർക്കും എന്തെങ്കിലും ഡൗട്ട്സ്? എനി ഡൗട്ട്സ്? ജോഗ്രഫിക്ക് എന്തെങ്കിലും ഡൗട്ട്സ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇനിയിപ്പോ പ്രിലിംസ് വരെ നോക്കണ്ട, അതിനുശേഷം ജസ്റ്റ് മെസ്സേജ് മീ ഇഫ് യു ഹാവ് എനി ഡൗട്ട്സ്. We'll be able to talk and figure it out. No problem there. I'll always be available.
അപ്പൊ ജോഗ്രഫി എന്താ വേറൊരു കാര്യം കൂടെ പറയാനുള്ളത്, ജോഗ്രഫി മെയിൻസ് കഴിയുന്നോടെ വരെ ഇനി ഫിലിംസ് കഴിയുന്നോടെ വരെ നോക്കണ്ട, സമയമില്ല, കുഴപ്പമില്ല. ഫിലിംസ് കഴിയുമ്പോൾ മോസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് യു, ഐ ഹോപ്പ് മോസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് യു ആർ ഗോണ റൈറ്റ് ദി എക്സാം. സോ അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്, we can consider, we can talk at that point of time, but still a heads up how to go after film. Mains എഴുതുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ obviously you have to focus less on content. കുറെ content പഠിക്കുക, but more than that, writing, how to write and how to maximize the content that you have. small കുറച്ച് content ആയിരിക്കും കാണുക, അത് എത്രയും ഏറ്റവും നന്നായിട്ട് എങ്ങനെ യൂട്ടിലൈസ് ചെയ്യാം ഓരോ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസിൽ, മൾട്ടി യൂട്ടിലിറ്റി ഉള്ള കണ്ടന്റ് പഠിക്കുക. ഇനി അതല്ല, unfortunately if you couldn't make it to the films, into the mains, that happens in first attempt sometimes, then you have a wonderful opportunity to go through the option thoroughly, refer the material, reference material, complement it in the class notes, and really build a base. Okay, and by the next December, you will be done with geography, perfect understanding of geography. And when you go into the next one, you'll be pretty much superior. So every case, it's a win-win situation. And obviously, now its focus should be on prelims. Prelims, as much of content, it's a game of skill also. So you have enough time even now, to 1.5 months are there. So rather than just studying content needs to be studied, very necessary, but rather than focusing solely on content, you have to put your focus equally on building the skill, which I think you have the mentors and everything, they will be helping out there. And also one more fact which I feel is that never get disappointed in your marks that you get, or your ability to not make a quantum jump. So for different aspirants, for പല ആൾക്കാർക്കും പല സമയത്താണ് ആ ജമ്പ് ഉണ്ടാകുന്നത്. So till the last day, you can get disappointed, or till the exam is finished, you cannot get disappointed or feel demotivated, because at any day, ഒരു ദിവസം ഒരു പ്രഭാതത്തിലാണ് നമുക്ക് ആ ഒരു വെളിപാട് കിട്ടുന്നതെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ, sometimes it just clicks like that. This is the way to go about prelims. So that happened for me. I studied for 2 years, nothing happened, but in the third attempt, sometimes or second or 2 or 3 or 1 week or a couple of tests, I was able to crack that. And then ever since that, it was easy journey for me as far as prelims is concerned. So that's going to happen to you. That's going to happen to you at later time, because in the first attempt, it will not happen in the initial months. It will mostly, it's going to happen in May or some early May, later May, some May, at that point of time. So got to be patient till that point of time. Patient in the sense that you got to wait for your time and put that extra effort as much as you can. No family commitments, no friendship, nothing, no time for any other purposes at this point of time. Just films. I'm sure you're doing that, so no need to go into that. Yeah. Yeah. So glad to take these classes here. I was not able to properly come to Pala because I thought like I will come in the March 1st, 2nd weeks, but when I wanted to come there, the other portions of geography was going on, so I was not able to come. Films course, so I was not able to come there. I wanted to come there and take classes, but that is one regret I have. But other than that, I think we have went well. Chill later, because geography, it's kind of like that. Geography is a little more broader topic. Yeah, that happened. But on the whole, I think we did a good job with covering through all the different dimensions of geography for my and for Man's topics. So obviously we will be there. Both of you will be there. So once you get your time to spend more time on mains, on option, reach out to us. We're happy to help. We'll be happy to share the experience and the content that we have. And I'll be I'll make that content available within 1 or 2 weeks to Jubin. He will be sharing you that material, additional reading material, so that will be taken care of sadly. You don't have to read it now. After mains, you can read that. Okay, fine. If there is something you need to speak, can. Otherwise, we'll continue. Okay, then see you sometime soon. Maybe I'll be visiting Pala sometime, so I'll come around. Yeah.
അതെ, കറണ്ട് അഫയേഴ്സിനകത്ത് നോക്കുമ്പോ എന്തൊക്കെ നോക്കണ്ടെന്ന് പറയാം, ജസ്റ്റ് ലാസ്റ്റ് ആയിട്ട്.
As to all other topics, huh? So you can do something about current affairs. Is that,
affairs.
yeah. Further?
അല്ല പ്രിലിംസിന് നോക്കുമ്പോഴേ കറണ്ട് അഫയേഴ്സിൽ ഇത് എങ്ങനെ നോക്കണം അതും കൂടി ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞുതരാം.
Yeah. See, go for one standard source. Pala institute material. I think a couple of them are the Vision is there, Forum is there, and some from Kerala is there. So if you have already read, if at all Pala, Namada Academy material, that's it. I mean, material is common for everyone. Like these days, there is no difference between one institute or the other. That's the same. Compilations of IKEA. Mostly you focus on economics, science and tech, environment. Environment, science and tech, and ecology. Sorry, environment, science and tech, and economics. Then you have polity, art and culture, social justice, all those things. The three most important one is environment, science and tech, and environment. Yeah. So within this, these three requires different kind of approach. For example, science and technology is about knowing about new technology, their details, things like that. So you can just go into like that. It's kind of more direct. Sometimes you get an applied one, but it's about identifying the different new inventions and new phenomena that is happening out there and understanding their different properties, which you can deal directly. As for economics, mostly it would be application type. It will not be direct questions. So when you read economic current affairs, you are try to understand the different things that is going on there. Excuse me. So and link it with your traditional static portion, and also come to an understanding as to what the finer details. Don't just going over the topic and by hearting something is not the way about it. So read it a couple of times. As for environment, I've already said what is environment there. So you have to identify, I mean, while reading one point is that you have to identify what is the relevant thing. So these materials, they all have some copy pasted material. I'm not saying it's bad, but there are few content which is extra. Now, to identify which is extra and which is not extra is something we have to understand by doing more questions. So for environment question, and I forgot to mention it that point of time too, and now you have to do more, lot of questions, solve more and more questions. By solving questions, you will get an understanding as to how these things work. So when you do a current affairs, after you have completed that 1 or 2 reading, you go and do it. Excuse me, do a test. So based on this test, you have to reverse engineer and see what all things I'm reading is relevant, what all things we are doing is not relevant. And the first test that you have to do is that previous year questions. PYQ should be read, especially 18, 19, 20, 21, 4 years. That's the pattern we are currently seeing. And then you will get to see that direct questions, rather than direct questions, applied logic knowledge is being applied. So whenever you are studying economics, say a concept about helicopter money or maybe a scheme, you have to internalize what that is essentially about. Right, that's very important. And as for now, since it is the first preparation stage, you have to mostly read some of the content given in the book, because everything would be new to you. Don't worry, in the second or third reading, second reading, third or fourth reading, you will be able to recollect things. Before that, it will be very difficult to recollect. So don't get demotivated by that. You would take a couple of revisions to get things to your mind. So after under reading, tension, it is so for everyone. Third and fourth reading. So try to finish that reading more quickly. That's the key. Not അത് മനസ്സിലാകുന്നില്ല, ഓർമ്മയിരിക്കുന്നില്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് കുറേ നേരം ഒരു ബുക്കിൽ ഇരിക്കുന്നില്ല, ഒരു പോയിന്റ് ഇല്ല. Who's gonna backfire? So ഏത് ബുക്കാണ് ആണ് സ്റ്റാറ്റിക് ആണെങ്കിൽ വായിച്ചു പോവുക, എന്നിട്ട് കൂടുതൽ വായനയിലൂടെ റിക്കളക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ ശ്രമിക്കും. ആൻഡ് ഓൾസോ ഡു ടെസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് നമ്മൾ റിക്കളക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കും. ഓക്കെ.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. അപ്പോൾ വേറെ ഒന്നുമില്ലെങ്കിൽ we'll conclude. Thank you. We'll meet again sometime soon. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
All the best for
sir.
prelims. Just be cool and just write it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, sir. Bye.
Bye. Bye.